All right, folks. It's Thursday live time. We're doing it again at 1 because I got something cool going on this afternoon at 2. Not that this isn't cool, but I'm going to be participating in the free Tony Robbins 3-day event. I'm going to be doing it with my wife. I'm really excited about this. I really love Tony Robbins' stuff, by the way. I've read his books. I listen to his stuff online all the time. Never actually attended anything of his. So that's going to be at 2. And today we're going to be chatting about something very topical. We're going to be chatting about health and RFK Jr. and his confirmation, which I think is literally still going on as we speak live. That's going to be something of conversation. Plus, I've got a special guest today that's going to hop on once I'm done my thing on health and making Canada healthy again. Eric North is going to be chatting about his endeavors, his business, and linking how health and business go together. At least in my opinion, I think it's the pinnacle of what we can do once we're healthy and fit. So stay tuned for that. So, folks, as always, welcome to the Hard to Kill podcast live edition. If this is your first time here, drop a comment. Say first time. I'm a podcast virgin. Love to hear where you're from as well. Let's get the comments going. Let's get the likes going, and let's make sure that this live stream gets pumped up. Pump it up. So before we get started, I have to thank our sponsor, Natesto, for sponsoring this episode. If you guys are experiencing low testosterone or think you might be experiencing low testosterone, go talk to your doctor and see if Natesto is the right solution for you. Link in the description. Go check it out. Make sure you take care of your hormonal health this year in 2025. And on to our share and shill moment. We're going to start with a really nice comment that I got review for my book, which I have right here on the screen. For you guys that are just tuning on audio, sorry you can't see it, but it's my book, Harden to Fuck Up. And the reviews keep on rolling in. This one's from America. It's from America. Although, you know what? Hey, look, like if you guys can see this, I got, 92% 5-star reviews. And I got a 4-star review the other day. I'm not really bitching that much, but I didn't get a review to know why I didn't get 5 stars. Guys, this isn't PLQ. This isn't a leadership course. This isn't like, oh, there's always room for improvement. This is algorithm stuff. If you really like the book, it's a 5-star. It's not, well, the font could have been better. I think the way that his grammar approached. No. That's not what this is about. If you enjoy the book, it's 5 stars. And I appreciate your input greatly. And if it's a 4-star, I want to know why. Or 3-star. Man, if I get a 3-star, man, I want to know why. But it's from Jordan in the United States of America. Unapologetically bold. I can't read. A blueprint for resilience and strength. As a man committed to growth in mind, body, and spirit, harden the fuck up. Hit me like a sledgehammer of truth. This isn't just another fitness book. It's a blueprint for resilience and accountability. The no-nonsense wisdom in these pages speaks directly to those of us who are done making excuses. It's raw, practical, and unapologetically focused on transformation. From sharpening your physical edge to cultivating the mental toughness required to thrive in an unpredictable world. If you're ready to stop living passively and start showing up for yourself, Harden the Fuck Up is a must read. No fluff, no BS, just powerful insights to push toward the man you're meant to be. Wow, that is freaking awesome. Jordan must be an author. That's a very well written review. I really appreciate it. So guys, if you're curious, you can head to the link is in the description. Get your paperback version, your Kindle version, or your audiobook version. I put a ton of work in. You'd be surprised how much effort there is for an audiobook. And the audiobook is a few hours long. I think it's got 2 hours of record time around there. Man, the amount of time it took to record those 2 hours was epic. And it's my voice. So if you don't like my voice here, maybe you shouldn't get the audiobook. But if you don't mind it, then pick up the audiobook. I learn really well from audiobooks, and I can just crush audiobooks in the car. So that's why I like that format. So go check it out and enjoy your Harden to Fuck Up and leave a review if you enjoyed it. So another thing hot on the list here of things to do for the community. I created a membership if you guys really want to support the show. So if you go to the main page here at the Hard to Kill podcast on YouTube, and YouTube only, I no longer have a Patreon account. There wasn't anybody. I wasn't promoting it, so and I didn't want the extra admin. So that's shut. That no longer exists. But you can join the membership team here on YouTube, and we got Fire Team Charlie for $6.99 Canadian a month. You get loyalty badges, members only live chats, early access to new videos, members only shorts. You also have the HQ. So you get everything I just mentioned before, plus member shout outs, discounted merch, and members only live stream. So if you want to support veteran owned business and support content that is relevant to the veteran population and support small businesses, hey, do what you got to do. Join. Love to see you there. We'll give you some shout outs and we get you dialed into the community. Lastly, I want to just highlight some oops, you know what I forgot to do? I do this all the time. I didn't put the tab up. Here we go. I'll put the tab up here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Fire Team Charlie and the HQ are right here on the main page. I want to head over to my Veterans Getting Fit AF community. Mark is absolutely crushing it. And I'll read his testimonial just from the last few weeks of being on the Beast Body Blueprint. So I started the Beast program on the 1st of January. Man, am I ever feeling better than I have in years. My energy is up, mood is up, and other things are up. Except my weight, down 7 pounds. Gents, this program is for you. I thought I was having low testosterone issues, not significantly scientifically proven, but I'm seeing and feeling results already. Eating clean, no sugar, low carb, and high protein and fats feels great. There's the testimonial. Maybe I'll get brave enough to share some before and after pics further down the road. Train hard, fried easy, Mark. So this is a great testimonial. And obviously, Mark is not getting paid to say this. He's getting the results that he always wanted. And it's through my Beast Body Blueprint system. It's a 5-step system. It's getting veterans results for the last 5 years. If you are curious, all you need to do is just join the community, ask me some questions, see if it's the right fit, and then we move on from there. Love to have you there and join the Beast Brotherhood. All right, so let's get right into the heart of our conversation today. So I wanted to highlight a few things here, namely health. Okay. And I'm going to contrast and compare Canadians versus Americans. I know we love doing that, right? We always love as Canadians to be like, oh, this is better in America. Okay, but are we? Are we? And right now, RFK Jr. is being grilled. He's in the hot seat. He's in the hot seat. U.S. lawmakers are just hammering him. And he's got to come up with answers. But from my unenlightened position and my perspective, he's going to get the nomination to be the HHS secretary. So the Human Health Services, I believe is what it's called in the United States. He's going to get the nomination and he's going to be the secretary for that department. I think he's going to bring some really interesting changes that are desperately needed in the United States. And as we know, what happens in the US typically happens here in Canada. I mean, COVID was a perfect example. We followed in lockstep with their policies. And now the US is taking a turn to deep health. And I think we're going to have no choice but to make that shift as well, because their culture obviously bleeds into ours. So I want to just show a few health statistics because I think we're due for a change. I don't think it can get worse. Maybe it could get worse, but ultimately we're at a low point and now there's a lot of potential to move up. So to frame this conversation before we get into what Kennedy has to say, I have on the screen here the percentage of Canadian adults who perceive their health as very good or excellent from 2015 to 2023. And this is from statista.com. We can see from 2015, it's pretty steady at around 60%. There has been a precipitous drop off since 2020 to 2023, going from 61.3% to 52.2%. What could have happened between that time? I don't know. A global pandemic, a overwhelming feeling of hopelessness and depression. So this is generalized data, but this is a really clear example that our perceived health has declined. And you know what? I have to be in that boat too. I just don't feel as healthy before the pandemic as I do now. So that's one thing. So perception is important. Moving on to a study from the was the NCHS data brief. This comes from the NCHS, which is part of the CDC in the United States. So what I have on the screen here is adult obesity prevalence in Canada and the United States. And I'm highlighting these things just to give you an idea of like where we stand. So are there differences in obesity prevalence estimates between Canada and the United States? So in 2007 to 2009, the prevalence of obesity in Canada was 24.1%, over 10 percentage points lower than the United States among men. The prevalence of obesity was over 8 percentage points lower in Canada than the United States. So we can see that there's a generalized trend here that Canadians are slightly less obese. Now, this is, albeit 15-year-old data. I should probably get an update. I should probably get some updated data, but this has actually gotten worse over the years. So we can see here that we're slightly less obese than the Americans, but still obese nonetheless. Now, based off Philip Ovadia's data, and well, I shouldn't say his data, but the data that he presented from a study that showed that 1/3, so actually 88, sorry, I should reframe that, 88% of Americans were metabolically broken. That means they have one of the following conditions: high blood pressure, obesity, high triglycerides, and what was the last? Insulin resistance. So if you have any one of those, you're metabolically broken. That is a huge concern. That leads to chronic disease. So therefore, there's a problem. 88% of your population is unhealthy by definition. Canadians are no different. 88% of us would fail the metabolic health test. So moving on to another stat that's a little bit depressing. Rate of childhood obesity in Canada. It's an estimated 1.6 million Canadian children are overweight or obese, which is 1 in 5 are overweight and 1 in 10 are obese, amounting to about 30% of children in Canada. So 1/3 of our kids are overweight. The long-term health implications and financial obligations that are going to be required, especially here, because we have a health system that is based upon ensuring everybody has health. So we have a single payer system, is going to be monumental because obesity is a disease. It needs to be treated. What does it need to be treated with? PT and not eating dog shit food. Again, something that RFK is talking about and he's advocating for. And just to give an idea of what the experts are saying, why is obesity so high in Canada right now? The CMA, so this is the Canadian Medical Association, are rooted mainly in changes in our environment and their effect on our eating and physical activity habits. The consequences are extremely serious, both for individual Canadians' health and the sustainability of Canada's healthcare system. Agreed. Just the other day, I posted this. Almost 3/4 of Canadian troops are overweight or obese. So the Canadian military has higher obesity rates than the general population, according to an internal briefing. That's just completely unsatisfactory. You can see here the MP sergeant with his gut hanging out over his belt. When fitness is a component of your job, like in the military, it is critically important that you're not overweight or obese. However, to push back, to clap back against my American friends that are shit talking in the posts, in the comments, you're not doing so much better yourselves there, guys. From military times, nearly 70% of active service members are overweight, report finds. And that's from 2023. So, yes, maybe a little bit thinner. And I find this actually kind of hard to believe because having been deployed with the American Army, they were getting skin fold tested and having, evaluators come and making sure they made weight while on deployment. Guys are running like the heavier guys, right? The football players, the big dudes, because they use BMI as a way to measure how big they are. We're running around in Afghanistan with a garbage bag on to drop weight. I was like, dude, what are you doing? Bro, I got to make weight. For what? We're getting on the scale. Oh my God, that was insane. So that was their level of accountability, which I found pretty cool. We definitely didn't have that here in Canada, but to see that 70% of them are overweight is actually really kind of shocking. But America takes things a lot more seriously, especially because this is a national security concern, because they also have an issue with recruiting, because you have to be of a certain body fat percentage and BMI in order to join the military. And if you just don't meet the standard, you can't get in. We, on the other hand, I mean, we've tried a bunch of different things. We tried basically fat camp. It didn't work. It's a terrible idea, because psychologically, if you can't get ready to join the military and lose weight and get fit and healthy, you're going to be a drain on the system, because you don't have the mindset of somebody that should be a soldier. So that's why that program failed. It's just a clear cut example of trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. You got to recruit the people that you want in the system, not the people you don't want, and then try to mold them. But I digress. Let's look at chronic disease. Chronic disease. All right. This is what I talked about. Metabolic disease. It all leads to chronic illness, cancer being one of them, Alzheimer's, heart disease. The majority of all the known diseases that we have right now are all essentially based upon chronic illness. Chronic illness is what RFK is talking about. We got to get a grip of this. We finally have a politician that is going to take this seriously. So I'm excited for it. But chronic illness is an ongoing health condition that can affect someone's health and quality of life long term. There are many different types of chronic illness. The Australian Institute of Health and Welfare notes that the most common conditions include asthma, arthritis, cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, chronic kidney disease, mental health conditions, localized pain such as back pain, like this guy, osteoporosis, and although there are others. Okay, so that's the definition of chronic disease. Number one on the list is the United States of America. Most chronically diseased place on earth. Second is Bulgaria. Third is Hungary. Where does Canada rank on this? So this is an interesting little graph here, a little chart, and Canada ranks number 29, if I'm not correct. Yep, 29. So I find that interesting. Our cancer rates are very high, in the top percentile here for sure. At their scale is based off of cancer rates per 100,000. So 348 per 100,000 citizens is actually quite high. And then they rated based on all the other chronic conditions as well, but cancer being very high for Canadians, which is pretty shocking. So folks, I'm curious to know what you guys have to say. What about this is kind of sticking out to you? Like, are you noticing that your health over the last, let's say, 4 years has declined? If so, why? Love to hear what you have to say in the comments. We'll head over to John Bastien. Just go to the grocery store and look at the piles of reformulated carbohydrates and fat stuffed in colored boxes. Yeah, I agree. It's actually, I mean, when you walk into a grocery store, right, and you just kind of observe when you're outside of the fruits, vegetables, and like produce, and sorry, that is produce, and butcher section, it's just a sea of colors. And I see that as there's like the candy aisle too, right? Which is kind of insane when you think about it. It's just like all the crap they put all in one aisle, but it's designed that way. And the reason why it's designed that way, because it's attractive to the eye, because it's poison. So you have to like put cartoon characters and make it look amazing. And so all of these different colors play tricks on the mind to make it attractive, but you're ultimately poisoning yourself slowly but surely. I mean, the FDA has now gone down the route of banning a red food dye, which has been banned in cosmetics for years. Canada essentially said, no, we're good. It's not that bad. It's just conspiracy theories, essentially, which seems weird, because we know it's we know it's a toxin. It's a neurotoxin known for years, but only because a new administration in the United States has said, hey, we're going to like be really, really on your ass to make sure that we clean up our food guidelines and what gets added into food. Now they start going, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah. So these agencies in the United States, these three other agencies that are in charge of a lot of things, basically are controlling what we eat based off corporate interests. I think that is going to change. And that's essentially what I think the main thesis of RFK is like, we got to get corporate interests out of our food. That's what's causing the main thrust of all of these chronic diseases. And I think I have to tend to agree, but let's listen to what he has to say in a short minute. See what Jenny has to say. Quality of food. Meat has significantly gone down in price. Meat has significantly gone down and price has gone up. Yeah, I presume you're talking about the quality of the meat and the amount of nutrients that are in there. You know, I like following the carnivore MD, Sean Baker. So he's had some really interesting conversations about that. Like, should you only go for organic, grass fed? He's like, hey, look, at the end of the day, yeah, you might get a little bit more, but you're playing on the edges. Get beef, eat your beef, and even if it costs a little bit more, pound for pound, you're still getting a ton of nutrient density. And on top of that, you save all the money from not buying all the carbohydrate and seed oil laden foods that just don't do any benefit to your health. So I'm rounding out the end of my carnivore month. So I've been dry. I haven't been drinking any booze. Not that I drink much booze in the first place. I've been eating meat, eggs, dairy, touch of honey from time to time. It's technically from an animal. Okay. It's not wrong. And I'm ending this month with a fast. So I'm fasted right now. Worked out this morning. I'll be fasted till tomorrow supper time, and I'll be reporting on my results. If you're interested, just stay tuned to this channel. I'll be reporting on it and on X and Instagram. Okay. Another comment here from John Bastien. When I was posted out west, our meat was shot or caught. Yeah. There's nothing better than wild meat, I'll be honest. Deer, got a ton of deer in the freezer at home. My uncle got a moose. I'm hoping to get some moose meat, Uncle Steve, if you're listening. I'm coming. Sausage, steaks, let's make it happen. The nutrient density is just it's on a whole other level. However, if if it's a cost thing, you can get just your regular, steak from the grocery store and you'll still get a good amount of nutrients, and you don't have to go find a whole bunch of different plant-based stuff or stuff from a box to complement your nutrient profile. This is a whole other conversation, but I love where it's going. I'm just going to go into the 5 takeaways from RFK Jr.'s first confirmation hearing, and this is from the BBC. Some of the main highlights here. The vaccine issue is obviously something that came up. Now, I have to watch what I say here on YouTube, but since this is directed from the BBC, I think I'll be all right. So throughout the hearing, senators brought up Kennedy's past comments about vaccination. And I'm going to get into a little bit deeper about vaccination and show you just a great conversation you have with Sean Ryan in a second. Kennedy insisted during the hearing that he was not anti-vaccine and that he merely supports more stringent studies and safety tests for injections. He said he supports the current childhood vaccination schedule and insists he was not a conspiracy theorist. And as a quote from Kennedy, "That's a pejorative that's applied to me to keep me from asking difficult questions about powerful interests," he told senators. So before I actually started listening to Kennedy, my opinion of him was based off of mainstream media, that he was a nutcase. I had no other reference points. I didn't know all of his work that he did protecting the environment and cleaning up the Hudson River. I had no idea. I just knew he was a Kennedy. Cool. And then he was labeled a conspiracy theorist and anti-vaxxer. So for me, I was like, well, this guy is not credible, so I'm not going to listen to him. Things have changed. Hey, things have changed. What changed it? Global pandemic, man. Definitely changed the way I thought about things. Coming from a science background, I was very dogmatic in thinking that the science establishment was pure and true and the source of truth. And now I realize, no, just like everything else, it's run by human beings, and human beings are fallible and they do things for their own personal interest and gain. So it's important to ask difficult questions, and you're going to be labeled whatever you're going to be labeled, but to keep on moving towards the truth. So that being said, I've listened to some conversations to hear his refinement of this idea, but he still gets labeled an anti-vaxxer because he doesn't like some vaccines, and he doesn't like the fact that pharma is pushing these schedules on people, and he thinks people should have a better idea of what they're putting in their bodies. I think that's a very valid concern, and I fully support what he has to say on that front. Being labeled a conspiracy theorist, I think that term is starting to lose weight and going back into where that came from. Believe it or not, conspiracy theorist was created by the CIA in order to discredit his family, because anybody that questioned the soon-to-be released JFK files was labeled a quote-unquote conspiracy theorist. So that term didn't even exist until JFK's assassination. So anyways, I digressed a little bit there, but his family has really pissed off the American establishment for years, and he's continuing to do so. If you like a McDonald's cheeseburger, he said, "Hey man, I'm up for freedom of whatever you want to eat. Just people should be informed of what they're eating." He's like, "I don't want to stop it." And he made a joke that his boss sure as hell likes his McDonald's and Coke, so he's not going to take it away from him. He mentioned abortion. That's not a topic I'm really too dialed into. So his stance on that, I don't know, seems pretty reasonable. But he is a very devout Catholic, so that factors into it. So they tried to press him on that, but he seemed to brush that off pretty easily. And then Senator Sanders pushes over unvaxxed onesies. This was kind of weird. I watched this. Senator Sanders, so Bernie Sanders, was talking about, like, do you support these like anti-vaxxer like onesies for kids and stuff like that? And it seemed like a weird question coming from Bernie Sanders. I think he had a much better line of questioning, and we'll get into it, about do you believe that healthcare is a human right? Because I think it is, and the Republican side of things, they clearly have a stance that it isn't, because it's very murky waters. So I thought that was pretty cool too. So moving down now into the actual summary here, I'm just going to show you a quick rundown of what happened yesterday, and we'll tune in live and see what's going on now.
Food away from anybody. If you like a cheeseburger, a McDonald's cheeseburger, a Diet Coke, which my boss loves, and you should be able to get them. If you want to eat Hostess Twinkies, you should be able to do that. But you should know what the impacts are on your family and on your health.
Did you say on a podcast, and I quote, "I wouldn't leave abortion to the states. My belief is we should leave it to the woman. We shouldn't have the government involved, even if it's full term." Did you say that, Mr. Kennedy?
Senator, I believe that every abortion is a tragedy.
Did you say it, Mr. Kennedy?
I'm just going to skip ahead here, just because
it matters. It doesn't.
People are on it. They don't like Medicaid. They like Medicare. And they like private insurance.
I didn't like the abortion stuff.
Need to listen to what people.
That's another podcast.
On private insurance. Most Americans, if they can afford to be, will be on private insurance. We need to figure out ways to improve care, particularly for elderly, for veterans, for the poor in this country.
Oh, yeah.
And Medicaid.
I just want to touch on that point. Improve care for elderly and veterans. That factors into their political discussion. How do we take care of veterans? It doesn't factor in here at all. One of my goals is to put veteran health on the political landscape, because it's just not, right? It doesn't factor into whether people vote, except for veterans, in the federal election for a certain particular candidate or not. I'm hoping to change that with enough people following here, and that's why it's important to subscribe and like. But also, the way you treat your veteran is kind of a representation of how you treat everybody. And if you treat the people that actually put their ass in the line for the country very well, then it's not a large logical leap to think, hey, maybe we'll treat everybody really well too. And our fundamentally our system here in Canada is really screwed up, and we don't have any true system set up here for veterans to make sure that we're well. The bureaucrats at VAC are just bureaucrats. They take in paperwork, but there's no actual medical system like in the US. Our veterans hospital here is the only one in Canada, and it's the province that runs it, and it's a disaster now. So veterans don't have a doctor from, like in the States, a VA that can actually know what you've gone through, because they deal with soldiers all the time. Here, we all deal with our individual doctors, and it's a gong show. So anyways, more on that in the future, but I'm glad he brought that up in his hearing.
The current model is not doing that.
If you are in this position, will you pledge that you will not fire federal employees who work on food safety, work on trying to preventing things like salmonella?
Senator,
Not what I want to listen to.
yeah, I mean, the first thing that occurs to me when you ask that question is, what patient would want
some more American stuff here,
believes
related to their I want to fast forward,
being
actually,
forced to
and
perform that. I don't know anybody who would want to
good old
have
Bernie.
that 20 years and you get cancer. If you smoke cigarettes for 20 years and you get cancer, you are now taking from the pool in your.
So I want to show that because it's an important American concept, right? When we have a single payer system here in Canada, you could, treat your body like a dumpster. And then what that means is everybody kind of has to pay for your crappy decisions. So I see their argument, right? That, hey, why should I be paying for somebody that doesn't take care of themselves? Okay, I get that argument. But, I also think that you should be able to go to the hospital and not have to worry about going bankrupt. So I think there's a lot of merit to having a system that works if you can access it timely and effectively, like in the US. Here, I really don't like the system. It just sucks. It just if you don't have something that is absolutely critical, I'd love to know what you guys have experienced here in Canada. Anyways, if you're Canadian, what's the medical system been like for you, especially for veterans? For me to try and get anything done, I'm going to the States to get stuff done now because I'm not waiting. So curious to know what you think. Okay, so I wanted to pop over just for time's sake and show you guys if you want to get a really good insight into Kennedy's thought process and what he's talking about with vaccines and what he's talking about with respect to food. Um, I I put the timestamp here. It's at the 208 mark, but you might want to listen to the whole thing. He talks about Ukraine and like his whole family and everything like that. I've listened to a few of his conversations, but this one on the Sean Ryan show was great. And you definitely going to listen to this if this is a topic that interests you. So the 101 of you that are tuning in right now, if you haven't tuned in already, go check this one out. I'll put it here in the comment section, and decide for yourself. Would this type of thinking, would it be beneficial to us here in Canada? And do you think it's actually going to make its way up here to Canada? And the other thing I'll just point you in the direction of, and again, this is a tweet from Senator Rand Paul. I'll summarize it real quickly here. During the hearing, it made clear that we need medical freedom. There's such a belief in submission. Submit to the government, do what you're told. There is no discussion. There ought to be a debate. RFK Jr. has my vote. Make America healthy again. A lot of the folks on this panel really had a lot of respect for him and said that, hey, we really recognize all the good you've done. So they're nitpicking on points that were very politically motivated. But at the end of the day, this is what we're talking about. It's to have a clear voice and to know that, hey, if I have a dissenting opinion, especially with respect to my health, that I'll be respected and I can move forward with that discussion. So I like what's going on here. And lastly, just to kind of bring this all together, way back to, I think this was 2020, the Great Barrington Declaration. They've been talking about vaccines and talking about resistance to vaccines, and people like, oh my God, now, kids aren't getting their measles vaccinations. Kids aren't getting their polio vaccinations. And this was prophesized in 2020 by the Great Barrington Declaration. I put a post about this when it first came out and it nuked my channel. But now this is all come to reality. And I'll read it, not the whole thing, just the first part, because these are some of the best documents, 941,000 signatures. And it's Great Barrington or gbdeclaration.org. As infectious disease epidemiologists and public health scientists, we have grave concerns about the damaging physical and mental health impacts of the prevailing COVID-19 policies and recommend an approach we call focused protection. So just briefly, what did they say in this document? The Great Barrington Declaration, as infectious disease epidemiologists and public health scientists, we have grave concerns about the damaging physical and mental health aspects of COVID-19 policies and recommend an approach we call focused protection. Coming from both left and the right and around the world, we have devoted our careers to protecting people. Current lockdown policies are producing devastating effects on short and long-term public health. The results, to name a few, include lower childhood vaccination rates. We're seeing that now. Worsening cardiovascular disease outcomes. We're seeing that now. Fewer cancer screenings. We're seeing that now. And deteriorating mental health. Obviously, we're seeing that now, leading to greater excess mortality in years to come. That's literally what we're seeing right now, with the working class and younger members of society carrying the heaviest burden. Keeping students out of school is a grave injustice. Keeping these measures in place until a vaccine is available will cause irreparable damage, with the underprivileged disproportionately harmed. Okay, so why did I bring that up? It's because we weren't allowed to discuss what RFK wants to discuss now in HHS and in the American government. This is what somebody like RFK hopefully will ensure doesn't happen again, which is absolute lockout of ideas and absolute lockout of just discussing health and like sacred cows like vaccines. I hope that type of thinking can come here to Canada as well, because if we shut people out and dissenting voices out, you're never going to get a clear picture of what could potentially be good for society, because you're only going to be in lockstep with what the government says. And that's usually not the best way forward. So that's where I'll wrap this up. Eric has been waiting patiently in the wings here. He's going to be talking about his business and a few other things on the veteran landscape. He is a veteran himself. We hung out in Atlanta this year, or actually last year. Now that
Yes, sir.
so fast. So Eric, welcome to the show, man. Let's start shooting the shit, man. You got a lot of things to share, and I always have time for fellow veterans that are in the entrepreneur space and that are doing good things and making an impact on the world. So Eric, why don't you introduce yourself and let the folks know what you're up to?
That's great, Dave. No, thank you so much. As people are going to come to know, I'm a bit of a drama queen, so I can get on the stage and just talk and talk and talk and talk. So I'm going to have to look for you to either get that big cane out and just gently nudge me back off afterwards. Yeah.
Okay. No worries. Tony Robbins waiting. So when I get my notification, I'll let you know.
Perfect. There you go. Awesome. Well, thank you again for having me on the show. It's a great privilege actually to be out here today and just talking a little bit about the business and where I see some things headed. But I was going to maybe start by asking you a question, and I'm going to tip my hand to my ignorance here. With your business and where things are going, like what do you see next for you in the business you're doing? And like, just as an example, like, do you have any visits or any like places you're going to be going to the next little bit? Have you already sort of dropped that for folks to kind of know what's coming next in store for Dave Morrow and Hard to Kill? Oh,
man. Well, I'm glad you asked. Eric. Yeah, I've got a lot on the go, actually. The biggest thing, and I mentioned it last week, I'll be heading to San Antonio for 2 days to chat with Tim Jensen on the American Grit podcast. So that's going to be in San Antonio. I'm super stoked about that. You might have met Tim in Atlanta. So he's the CEO of Grunt Style.
Okay.
And it's going to be huge because he's the author of the foreword to Harden the Fuck Up. So he's got with his foundation, the Grunt Style Foundation, they've got something called the Triangular Compass, which is a health initiative to get veterans healthier, and based on the hashtag No More Dead Friends. So their push is to really incorporate deep health into the veteran community, and they've tapped me to be one of their spokespeople. So I'm really excited about that. I'll be heading down to Mick again in September this year, September, early October. My hope is, man, I'm really hoping that with this new cultural shift towards health and like deep health, that the federal government here will take an interest more than they already have, and start looking at folks like myself as potentially avenues or vectors to get to the community, to like the veteran community, especially to improve their health so that they don't have to spend as much money. Right. Like at the end of the day, it's a dollars and cents thing for the government. And, I definitely can provide better solutions at a fraction of the cost. It's just, how do you break through the big pharma machine, which is still prevalent here in Canada as well. That's kind of what RFK is trying to break. So yeah, thanks for asking. That's what's on the agenda.
I know, and just on the show here, just going back a few minutes now, but you talked about some of the medical services. And I mean, even just in the little private chat we had here on the side, I did post a little bit about my experience, just a few words on like getting out of the forces. Cause I'm not going to lie, like coming out, that was a huge concern for me. Like, oh my God, what am I going to do for healthcare? I mean, up to this point, I've just gone to the MAR, I've gone to health services, I've pitched up if I had a boo-boo or whatever, and they've helped me out with that. And you're just sort of stepping out into the big black unknown. So, I mean, my experience was actually not all that terrible. I ended up getting rostered with a clinic. There are a network of clinics that is out of Ottawa and Toronto. So for any other veterans out there who are either like still looking for a family doctor or might be in the Toronto, Ottawa area, it's Apple Tree Medical. And that's my experience so far. I can't quote anybody else's, so no guarantees on what your experience is going to be like, but I've actually been pretty good, all things considered. So big shout out to Apple Tree Medical for all the help they've given me so far.
Right on. Well, I mean, like when we're in Atlanta too, like the boys from Avail, Medical were out there with us, right? And they seem to be
Right.
doing some really good work across Canada as well, and creating that one-stop shop thing for veterans to access, which is just common practice in the US. Shout out to Core Medical, actually, that I'm setting up my blood work with them as we speak.
Oh, cool.
So there's a bunch of options out there. And yes, I mean, the unfortunate reality is that if you want like a good tailored service, at least for what I want, you have to pay. But in your case, this is a private clinic, if I'm not correct.
So they are like available through like I'm with OHIP, so the province,
okay.
like provincial healthcare. There's a few exceptions. Like I think if you need like doctor's notes filled out. So if it's for oh my goodness, I can't even think off the top of my head. Like okay, here's one. So Via Rail now has changed their policies for their different like statuses and tiers and things. So if you buy a ticket at like I think the lowest, I think it's the escape fare. If you want to change seats, it's like a $7 fee. But if you have like a medical issue that say for example, you want to be sitting in a certain seat, or a certain orientation, right? Like maybe I get really nauseous, right, when I'm on a train if I'm facing backwards. Well, that's a medical thing. So you go through this whole process of getting a form filled out from your doctor, and then it gets sent in, and it's like super detailed. There's just like pages and pages and pages, right? Like typical bureaucracy. Talk about that, right? Like on your show here with bureaucracy. I mean, my goodness, they've got this thing like they got that in spades, right? So it's big giant form your doctor has to fill out. So that's going to be for a fee. Like if you have a nurse practitioner filling it out, they're going to expect that, they're not doing that for free. They're going to have to, you'll exchange some money and get that form filled out. So, but most of it though is covered under OHIP. So I just show up and I get my appointments, and it's kind of like going to the MIR in some ways.
That's good. That's good. So Eric, fill us in. What are you up to in the entrepreneur world right now?
Yeah, no, thanks. Good question. So a couple things. I'm in that space where I'm kind of like, there's no bad ideas, if that makes sense. And right now, like looking at what I can do to help small businesses and small business owners who might also be like early on in their journey in getting things started. So building up all the lessons that I've been building up and thinking how, gosh, there are likely tons of other people that are probably experiencing the same teething pains that I'm going through. And if there are any things rather that I can help share with them that are going to make their journey just a little bit easier and helping them get through some of these things that are just like, it might be feeling like a trip to the dentist. Well, goodness, can I just help by, relaying some of that information to them, right? And through some coaching and just helping them out. I love technology. I'm like a self-proclaimed giant nerd. So for technology, like that's where I love to play. But really, like there's like all bets are off, right? There's no bad ideas. And in business, like especially like when you're just getting started, you have to kind of be doing everything and having all these different hats, and you're wearing all these different hats every day. And so like seeing that, in myself and just like in my business partner and like where we're going with things, I'm like, there have to be other people out there that are experiencing the same type of angst and issues and frustration. And so again, like just trying to help those people out. That's kind of where I want to take things with the business. Yeah.
Nice. So yeah, give us some details. What are we looking at here? We have some links. We have some websites. Where are we at?
Yeah. So just a quick little segue. I put a book out. It was gonna go out late last year, but for various reasons, I decided to hold off. It's going to get kind of dark here for a second, but a classmate of mine actually passed away. I think it was Boxing Day. And it was after a battle with cancer. So talking about, with the health and stuff on your show, I mean, it's actually kind of it's a bad topic, of course. And my heart goes out to Chris Shank and his family. And, it was awful, just awful. That time of year, especially, it's last time of any time of the year where you want that to happen. But So I held off on the book. I'm like, no, I'm going to wait till afterwards. The dedication is going to include Chris in the dedication. So I did. I waited till afterwards, and it's out now. But yeah, it's just come full circle, man. Like you're with people, like, through your whole career, and, you're in class with them. And then like, you hear stories like this, and it's, So
yeah, it's too bad. So where can we find? I'll pull it up there.
So
is it on Amazon, or do you have is that the link that we have here?
Yeah. So this is my Patreon page. Now it is available on Amazon for anybody who wants to go there. They're happy to buy it, but just, full disclosure, in my greedy, sinister little mind, if you buy it from Patreon, I get a bigger cut. So It's up
Hells
to
yeah.
everybody where they want to get it. There's actually a few different places. It's actually through global distribution. So literally almost any like online bookstore is going to carry it. But that link that I sent you, do you have the link or is it?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
I don't know if you want to flash that up on the screen,
Yeah,
if you can
I'm
do that.
gonna, yeah, I'm going to do that here. It's just the Patreon link opened up in my same window as my StreamYard here.
Oh, okay.
So there we go. Boom.
Yeah, so this is it. It's the bad boy right here. It actually started as a T-shirt idea. So just a shout out to another veteran-owned business. Keith Pereira runs a print and marketing service out of Toronto, and I've done a T-shirt with him in the past. And I thought, maybe it's time for a new T-shirt. So started putting some ideas together. And at first, it was just slogans that were kind of generic. And then I thought, I got to come up with something that's sort of unique. That's got my own flavor to it. And so out of that came this idea of send me places. So it's thinking of all the expressions that you may have heard from your time in the military. And I don't know about you, but just having different people, different bosses and different folks going off about some of these military expressions. And so that's really what the book is. It's basically just a collection of like these expressions that you might have heard over the course of your career. And then some of the expressions are actually like, specific to experiences that I encountered as well. So there's a little bit of both. And it's basically just 150 pages of send me places. Send me places where it sucks to suck.
Got it. So is this your first foray into being an author?
No, actually, it's not. I've had a previous book out. It's been up for a couple of years now. It's about sailing. So
Really?
many moons ago, I had the pleasure of sailing with a gentleman who's now since passed away, but he took his boat out to the Maritimes every other summer, and then he was sailing into like the Great Lakes on the odd summers. And so I had a chance to go on those trips went with him on those trips and got to experience life at sea. It was awesome.
Right on.
Awesome.
Right on. Do you have a link for that? Is that something I could put up here too? Like, is it Amazon or it's a Patreon link as well?
Yeah, you could find it on Amazon. It's called Knots Made Good.
Like KNOT?
Yeah, KNOT. Yeah, that's right.
Knots Made Good.
Knots Made Good.
We'll get you some sales here, Eric. We're gonna, yeah, there we go. All right. I'm gonna put this up on the screen here. There we go. Knots Made Good.
And so just a bit about this book. So the artwork is all hand-drawn maps. Jennifer Bass is an AXO. She was based in Greenwood at the time, but we basically paired up to co-create this book. I had some help from Mike Peters, who's now also out of the forces. So this was sort of like a forces kind of unite team effort, getting folks to come together and help me tell my story about all these different adventures I had. And if anybody's ever sailed or been on ships before, you'll probably know that there's like a log that you have to maintain and kind of put entries down about various parts of your journey and what's happened along the way. So that's essentially how it reads. It's just sort of like imagining yourself like reading through this ship's log, and there's like little anecdotes and things that we experienced along the way, little bits and pieces about some of the local places we visited. So yeah,
very cool. Any other books on the horizon?
Well, as it turns out, like what I mentioned here, just about all these little lessons, I'm sort of putting together kind of a short list of things that might be a good fit for a book for other business owners who might be thinking, man, I could really use some help with this one particular thing. So it's just kind of like it's still kind of in the gray matter right now, but yeah, maybe someday. Someday.
Okay, so you got a bunch of projects on the go. I know you've been, you came down to Atlanta. You're with 123 Cyber. You have Steady Notion. Like, there's a bunch of stuff on the go. Like, fill me in. Like, what's the plan? Where are you putting your effort? And some updates as to some of those projects.
Yeah, absolutely. So I go through these periods where it's like I get like incredible amounts of jubilation, and then it's right down to like the bottom of the barrel where I'm like, oh man, this really sucks. Not gonna lie.
That's like when things are going, oh man, I am king of the world, and then you go from the high of highs to it's like, why am I doing this?
Yeah,
I can't do anything. I suck at everything. Yeah, my wife knows it all too well. She's like, oh, it's a bad week. I'm like, yeah, that's it. I'm out. She's like, she's all the time. She's like, Dave, are you out? I'm like, no, not that. I'm good. I'm in. I'm staying. I'm all in.
And so it's funny how the universe answers though, because I mean, no kidding. I was sort of in that moment just recently. And then out of the blue, Caleb Walker calls me up. For anybody who doesn't know Caleb or hasn't met him yet, he owns and runs a digital insurgency out of Ottawa. And before that, he was working with You With Me, just a very charismatic, dynamic person. He was down at MIC with us as well. So he calls me up and he talks about this new initiative that him and his partner Dave Serapins are starting up, where it's basically going to help veterans get together in groups across the country. And it's based off a pretty successful model, which, to be honest, like for me, it would be out of my price range. I couldn't afford the amount of money and also just the amount of revenue I'd have to be bringing in to even just get a seat at that table. So in answer to the issue that most veteran business owners encountered last fall, when we all found out that the King's Trust was shutting down the Operation Entrepreneur program, and there was no real replacement waiting in the wings, I'm not going to lie, that left a huge void. And so I think Caleb and his business partner recognized that issue, and they said, okay, well, we're not just going to do nothing. We have to come up with something which is going to help veteran business owners, which is now this new initiative they're stepping out on. And so I feel privileged because I'm getting kind of like a front row seat, coming in on the ground floor just as it's getting started. And if anybody out there is interested, I'd be more than happy, as I'm learning information, as I'm getting more information on the program, I'd be more than happy to share that with folks. If they're in a similar situation, looking for details on what is this new networking group, how does it work, what can I expect, how is it going to help me with my business? So I was like, man, it just made my day. Caleb, you made my day, man.
Where can folks reach out to you? What's the easiest way?
Yeah, so I honestly, like a few different ways. I mean, email works. So eric.north@steadynotion.com. Okay. So steady like I'm holding steady, and notion like I'm having a thought. So eric.north@steadynotion.com. I'm on LinkedIn. We got a Facebook page, but I'm not going to lie. Like if Facebook was my kid, it would have died of neglect like 5 years ago. I'm not that good at doing Facebook stuff, but yeah, every now and then I'll put some stuff on there.
Yeah. I went through a phase too. I just reconnected a buddy of mine. We were deployed together. He was, I was deployed with the American. So he was the American XO on camp. We got along really well. He came to Montreal, like not long after we finished our deployment, hung out. And, then he went off into the SF world. And so it's been spotty, and we only communicated through Facebook. He wrote me last year, like, bro, I'm coming to Montreal. Are you still in Montreal? Love to hang out. And I literally just saw it yesterday, and I was like, no. So he sent me his cell. So I was like, dude, is this still you? Like, he's like, a year later, but not bad. So I was like, yeah, man, I really took a pause on Facebook just because it wasn't doing. I couldn't really use it for business purposes. So I said, well, why am I using it? So I was just kind of in and out. So I know the pain of neglecting a social media platform, and then realizing that maybe it it needs a little bit more attention at the end of the day. So okay, so this is really interesting. This is the first time. I knew you guys were up to something, but I didn't realize it was going to start filling the gap on the entrepreneur side for those that are still in the forces that want to like transition to entrepreneurship, or just veterans that want to test out entrepreneurship. That's really cool that you guys are taking the lead on that. And what I like about it already, and this is the fatal flaw that I identified with Princess Trust, is that it wasn't a privately owned and operated organization. And I believe that that's what killed it, because if you're being run as a charity and you're essentially using funds from benefactors, donors, it's essentially being run like a charity. But yeah, there's business elements to it, but for them, they didn't care about the metrics or the actual success of the entrepreneurs, because it didn't matter to how much funding they got. They still got the funding anyways. Unlike a model in the United States, like Bunker Labs, they are privately owned. If their candidates don't go on to have successful businesses, they don't get more business in the future because the market just wipes them out. Wow. Because that's the free market system, right? Like if I don't get testimonials, and if I do a shit job, right? Like any business, if you do a shit job delivering to your customers, you're not going to have customers.
Yeah.
So that's where I think they fell flat here in Canada anyways. So I really appreciate the fact that you guys are taking this on and starting something that could definitely benefit a lot of veterans in entrepreneurship, because it's a huge void. There's nothing
It
here
is.
in Canada
It is.
to get us kind of involved, other than, like, I think I'm the only Canadian military podcast that even talks about entrepreneurship. I'm just going to put up the MIC conference here. Actually, can I do that?
Can I just step in for a second?
Yeah.
So this idea I'm kind of floating out to everybody, and people tell me what you think about this, but like for folks that are maybe just starting on their entrepreneurial journey, for me the real frustration, and I'm still feeling this, it's you talk with folks from the made it crowd, and by that I mean it's folks that they might already have a well-established business. They've already broken through, and they got a lot of customers. They're a lot of sales. Their volume's good. Prospects look good. Profitability's up. Everything's just yeah, they're going to have their bad days for sure. They may talk about that, but they've made it. They've gotten past the pre-revenue, the shaky uncertainty, the, oh my God, I don't know if this is going to work. What am I doing? What else am I doing with my life? What else could I be doing with my life right now? And so you need to talk to people that are kind of that mindset, and that understand that get it. And, and at least in Canada, finding those people, they're hard to find. They are very, very, very hard to find, because it's small, right? Like relative to, say, country like the US, big population, diversity, lots going on. Canada, just we're not that big, and we do certain things pretty well, but for some of these things, it's just not really that well advertised. You really have to dig deep to find this stuff. And so that's hopefully what Caleb and his team are going to help change, I hope.
Yeah. You got that. The economics of scale, right? It's harder here to scale things because we just don't have the same population density as the Americans do. We're 10 times smaller, and geographically we're also spread out even further than the Americans. So it makes all that challenging for business. But with the power of the internet, you can make these networks come together, virtually at least, and start the actual process of getting some numbers, because I don't know if that's part of what you guys intend on doing, but we don't have any numbers here in Canada to know this subsection of a subsection of entrepreneurs, military veteran entrepreneurs. There's no data on us whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So it's very hard to make a case if you're making a pitch, like, hey, I'm a veteran that owns a business. We're part of this category. We're likely to have this, and this as like success stories, but we don't have that data. The Americans do. Veterans are more likely to start businesses in the U.S. Veterans are more likely to have successful businesses in the U.S. So they take all that data and they go, okay, well, cool. Like, let's set up a way to support you even better, because you can make a use case for it. But we don't have that here. So, whatever I can do to help further that, that's, why you're here. And as a project progresses, just please let me know, and I'll gladly share with the community. And, the more, in my opinion, the more veterans that get involved in entrepreneurship, entrepreneurs are problem solvers. Yes. Pretty much every one of us that served in the CAF was a problem solver. And 9 out of 10 times is because we didn't have shit to work with. So, hey, Sarge, get this shit done. Sir, I don't have any. Well, figure it out. Okay. So my whole life was just figuring it out. And everybody up the chain was the exact same thing. So if you can apply that mindset to business, you're going to be successful once you find that thing that you're really passionate about and that you're able to sell to others. And that's all. Everything we have in front of us right now is because one entrepreneur decided, I want to make like this bracket for my camera, or like this laptop, or so the world changes based off entrepreneurs. And I think it's a time for Canadian veterans to get that bug.
Yes.
And really run with it. And since there's nobody else in Canada doing it, man, he's got a wide open field, man. So, much success to you guys. I know Caleb's been working on the AI space for a little bit as well. So I'm sure he'll be leveraging a bunch of that experience he has as well. So I'm about ready to listen to Tony Robbins. So before we do, Eric, some parting words and some final thoughts.
Well, to anybody out there who's maybe still in the forces and they're thinking about an exit, maybe it's a couple years out or maybe it's a couple days out, or anybody who is already out and they're, on their way to starting a business, like keep doing it. Keep doing what you're doing. Learn lots, talk to people, join networks when you can find them. Like Trouble Victor is a good network to get started with. And then as you talk to those people, you'll find other networks to join, and just, don't stop. Keep at it. And, all those lessons you've learned along the way and being the CAF, resiliency, dedication, commitment, professionalism, all these things, they're going to come to the forefront. So keep at it.
Right on. I love the message. All right, Ark. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Dave.
Thanks
a
for
lot.
requesting to come on as well. And folks, if you got an interesting project, if you're working on a new business, if you got a charity, if you got a nonprofit, whatever it may be, I want to share your story as well. And you can reach out to me. All my details are on my socials. Easy to get a hold of me. And we'll see if we can set something up. So that's it for me. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with friends. And if you're keen, become a member, join the community, and we'll get you dialed in. That's it for me. Don't forget, train hard, fight easy. See you on the next one. Peace.